Hi, welcome to Bridge Hope's third live discussion on managing emotions. My name is Michaela Gray. In week one of the Managing Emotions series, we spoke with Dr. Renee Reset with Rung Froman about emotional courage. Week two, we focused on the power of knowing your why with Charlene Moore of Midtown Community Services. Today, we will focus on community connections and reimagining education for all. Are community connections important? Answer that question in this live video. Now, let me introduce Peter. Peter A. Franzen is SEAM's Associate Executive Director, a role he took on in 2014 after 2 years with the organization. In his current role, Peter manages day-to-day operations and strategic direction and provides development, leadership, and support. Peter holds a Bachelor of Arts in English Literature in addition to his MSW. Peter has dedicated the past 29 years to improving the quality of life for children and families and communities in St. Louis. In 1991, Peter came to St. Louis from Portland, Oregon to perform a year of voluntary services with local community agency serving children and families. He has twice been recognized by the Organization for Black Struggle with Unsung Hero of Human Rights Award. Please, St. Louis, pull up and help me welcome Peter. Hey, Peter.
Hello. Hi.
How are you doing today?
Fantastic. Thanks, Michaela. Thanks for having me come talk to you guys. I'm excited.
No, thank you for being here. Can you tell us a little bit about what SEAM is and what you do?
Sure. SEAM is a nonprofit that was formed in 2006 with the idea that parents should be empowered to make educational decisions on behalf of their kids as it relates to, where they send their kids to school. And so our whole mission is to support policy, which is another word for laws. So supporting the formation of laws and also supporting, innovation and great ideas related to education. So supporting policies that empower families to make decisions about their kids' education. And, our organization philosophically, I would describe it as being a little bit agnostic as it comes to, the type of school we're talking about. So our organization is very focused on the needs of the kids and putting those first, and not so much, the needs of institutions or adults. It's really about the kids and getting them into a learning environment. So what that really means, where the rubber hits the road, is supporting parents' right to choose a district school that makes sense to them, a charter school, a private school, a virtual school, transition to homeschooling, whatever it is, whatever makes the most sense for a family. I think, and that's what SEAM really stands for. And how we do it is we're really focused on engaging parents and school leaders and other people who care about education and try to get those folks organized and all pointed in the same direction and telling their stories, connecting with elected officials, connecting with each other. And so we end up with parents in the Capitol who are testifying on laws. We end up with parents who are being interviewed by the media, all of that. When I tell people what we do, I describe it with the letter A 3 times. So we raise awareness. That's one of the A's. We do that through social media. We get out and do stuff like this, what we're doing today. We get out into the community at community fairs and school fairs and recruitment events. So that's the awareness piece. We also do the advocacy training piece. So that's the second A. We have an advocacy training curriculum that we've developed over the years that helps anyone who wants to advocate become a better advocate. So that means understanding how laws are made and understanding the Capitol and how you navigate Jefferson City, how you tell your story. I know I hear Bridge to Hope often talk about what is your why, and that's really, where we're on the same page for sure, is understanding, what is your story as it relates to education for your kid. And then and getting people, through that advocacy training, because the third A is action, and that's helping facilitate people taking action. And that's the part about getting to the Capitol, about connecting with their legislators, connecting with their school leadership, with their school boards, all of that. Because, you know, when we talk a lot about policy change and talk about laws, there's really two kinds, and they're both important. You know, there's the laws that are made in Jefferson City, and that involves getting in there and talking to legislators and speaking up on behalf of or in opposition to laws that are being considered. And then there's administrative policy, and those are the kind of rules that are set by DESE or a school board or a school leader. So working on all of those policies so that they make the most sense, you know, for kids and for learning. That was a mouthful. I didn't mean to go on so long. I'm sorry.
That was
No,
a
you're
lot,
fine.
Peter. That was a whole lot. Michaela, if I can just ask Peter one quick question, and I'll give it right back to you. If you could just, like, if you could sum it up in one or two sentences, when you talk about community connections, because that's what we're focused on, in Children's Education Alliance of Missouri, your platform focus on the community piece of awareness, where Bridge to Hope focuses on the parent piece. Can you tell us briefly why that parent piece is so crucial in this current time that we're in? Why is the parent piece imperative for education?
Yeah, I mean, Carmen, it's imperative in my opinion. I mean, I think it's comes down to your philosophy about how laws should be made. And in my opinion, it should really involve, you know, the citizen, the consumer, the parent, and they need to be involved, because the reality is that, you know, laws are going to get made with or without parent input. So lacking any parent input, we're just sort of leaving it to people to make their best guess at what makes sense. But the kind of work that you're doing, the kind of work that SEAM is doing, getting connected with legislators is just really important. And, you know, it's so easy up there at the Capitol at Jefferson City, if you ever go there, it's just really easy for a legislator to say, well, you know, I don't really ever hear this from parents, so I don't really know what you're talking about. But when you show up with a rally of 600 people, or whether you show up with a handful of 5 or 6 parents, you know, they can't say that, because there's parents there in front of them saying, no, you know, this is my experience. This is what's happening to me and my child, and this is why I need a different option, or this is why I think more families should have the options that I have. So it's really critical getting the parents in there.
Exactly. Michaela?
So I think it is really important for parent involvement, which is what we work on a lot. Do you remember how you first met Bridge to Hope, came in contact with us?
Well, sure. I mean, there's, as you guys, I mean, I'm sure you'll be the first to say, it's been an evolving process. I remember I don't even know if it was 2019, it's the summer of 2019, maybe. So a year ago, I remember first meeting Crystal, who was working on her project and was at an event where we were with some parents, and was there collecting signatures and talking about her project. And of course, Carmen has advocated with SEAM on some of these charter school issues, and Carmen is a fantastic parent advocate, and so I've known Carmen for several years. And then, you know, Michaela, you were with us back in, I guess I want to say February. We went to the Capitol when a piece of legislation was being discussed in the House Education Committee, and so we all went there to testify for that. So I love Bridge to Hope, and I love what you guys are doing, and getting parents on these issues is so important.
And then can you tell us a little bit more about meeting us and the importance of those community connections related to meeting all 3 of us?
Well, yeah, this is the thing, is that, you know, never pass up an opportunity to, you know, connect with people, particularly, you know, on an issue like this, because you just don't know, you know, when a connection is going to be helpful to you, sometimes in unexpected ways, or sometimes exactly the way you thought. But that's, you know, to me, you know, making sure that, you know, you're aware of what's going on around you, and making sure not just what people who think like you are thinking and saying, but also people who don't think like you, what they're saying. You know, it's important if you're, you know, going up against the status quo, which is how I usually talk about the status quo, the thing, the beast. I mean, when you're going up against trying to change something, you really need all hands on deck. Otherwise, that thing is just not going to change no matter what it is, because institutions over time, have a real knack for perpetuating themselves. It becomes, part of law, it becomes part of tradition, it becomes part of expectation. And so trying to change something that we've been doing the same way for a long time really requires a lot of voices to make it manifest, to make it real.
Peter, let's bust this open a little bit. We are Bridge to Hope. We understand that the only way real change will happen is on the bridge. We understand that community connections are imperative. We understand that parents and people like you, community members, are going to be the force behind the real change. When we went to Jefferson City, we talked about House Bill, I believe it was 1733. Mr. Field, I can't pronounce his last name, sponsored that bill. One of the things SEAM does is they want the community to know about all options, whether that's private school, homeschool, charter school, virtual school, whatever that looks like, so parents give their children the best opportunity at an education. That is who SEAM is. That is who Bridge to Hope is. However, we also know, and you've shared, that this fight, for lack of a better word, happens in Jefferson City. So when you think about the community connection, can you talk about what the significance is of parents being aware that these bills exist? Can you talk to whether parents are really being given that information and what we need to do as partners, nonprofits, parents alike, to empower parents with that real information so our children have the best opportunity at an education? Peter, thinking back, I think you made your start at the water tower. So you're in the thicket of this with us. You know the trenches that we are in. So when you speak to those things, can you go through a little bit of that history of why you are in this fight for all children, but I want to highlight Black and brown children that are really being underserved?
Right. That was like 45 questions in one there.
Go on and tackle it.
But I do get the spirit, and you're right. You're a parent, what parents deal with and in their daily lives, and all of us. And now you layer on COVID-19, and there's so much to keep up with, and just daily life. And the truth is, I don't pretend to be some awesome change agent myself. I wasn't necessarily totally tuned in to the Capitol and going up to Jefferson City all the time on my own. And so, yeah, it's a real challenge. Imagine that, the folks watching right now have got to be pretty intense and pretty passionate. So if you're taking time out of your life to pay attention and learn about what people are doing to change laws, that's a different kind of person. And it's not everybody. Our whole process, we meet thousands of people, and it becomes, like a sifting process where you kind of have this funnel.
Right.
Out of the funnel are these really precious drops of advocates who really, that's how it comes out. You have to meet so many people before you meet someone who not only thinks it's important, but also wants to devote some time to that, kind of change. And, as for myself, you heard in my introduction, I came to St. Louis in 91, which is now a long time ago, to do a year of volunteer work through my church, and bam, I'm still here. So as you alluded to, I did live at 1515 East College for 10 years in the College Hill neighborhood. And I would say that whole experience profoundly changed my life and fully informed, and it has stuck with me, my understanding about the notions of race and class and what that all means, because there's just no way that, just if we're speaking bluntly, there's just no way that you're some white guy living in a predominantly Black, community that is challenged, that you you either get up and get out quickly, which I did not do, or, you know, meet people and understand, you know, what it's really, what it's really all about. And so that's really informed, you know, all of my work. And so I've been involved at the community level and, you know, after school programs and summer programs and mentoring programs. And I've been involved in the arts at the Black Rep. And, but, you know, this level of change, the kind of stuff that we're all trying to do here on this call, changing laws, is really, you know, the most profound kind of change. I mean, it's awesome to start something, to start a project, to start a program, and that does touch lives, and it is important, and it's what most of my career has been about. But when you start talking about changing laws, then you're really changing the rules of the game. And that's, you know, what we're trying to get done here is, so, you know, people who have options in Missouri right now, typically when it comes to choosing a school for their kid, you know, certainly there's great opportunities at scholarships and there's ways for people to avail themselves of options. But basically for, you know, 99% of the people, you either have choice by mortgage, which means you can afford to buy a home in the school district that suits you and your family and your kids, and good for you, and nobody's mad at you for that, but that's great. Or choice by tuition, which means, you know, you have an ability to pay tuition to send your kid to the school that makes the most sense for you. And my question just basically is, you know, why doesn't everyone have that right? You know, it's a conversation that is full of hypocrisy and protectionism of institutions and the way things have been done. But, you know, just because we've been doing it one way doesn't mean that there's not a better way to do it. And that's, you know, what I think this whole conversation is about.
That sounds like the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. And this ain't that anymore. Right. So here's my last question, then I'm gonna give this back to Michaela because you opened the door, so I'm gonna walk through it. When you're thinking about the importance of community connections and you're thinking about making sure that all children have a choice, especially the children in College and Carter that you ran into, which catapulted you deeply into this work, can you speak to local government? Can you speak to school boards and the responsibility of those entities, and or what may be perceived, and I'll use that word strongly, the perception that they may be blocking children from getting access to a choice? Do we, the parents, even have the right to a choice?
Well, I think you should have the right to a choice, for sure. You know, it's kind of what I don't know if I was really saying this, but as I was thinking. So, yeah, you know, institutions have a way of perpetuating themselves. And when you think about that, you know, even people who are then get involved and want to serve, they themselves, you know, are taking an oath essentially to do their job for the institution. You know, you join a school board and you swear that you're going to uphold, you know, whatever they say. You know, the idea is that you're doing that with the intent of, you know, do you know what I'm saying? It's, yeah, right. Schools work with kids, but they're also institutions, and they're a little bit dysfunctional when you're talking about, you know, some schools. And so they just have a way of perpetuating themselves. And so you really, it takes a lot of energy to, you know, stop that forward momentum and say, wait a second, you know, we want to do this, you know, differently. We want to have a choice. I want to send my kid to virtual online school because that's what makes sense for my family because of whatever you're doing. Or I want to send my kid to this Catholic school around the corner because, you know, that's where I went to school and I'd like to be able to send my kid there. So yeah, I mean, parents absolutely, in my opinion, should have a right to do those kind of choices in their lives and not just be, you know, I get it. I mean, I don't know. You know, a lot of people there's a lot of reasons why people don't want parents to have choice. And, you know, a lot of them have to do with race. A lot of them have to do with preconceived notions about parents and their abilities to even be parents. And, you know, that there's this one right way to do it. And it just doesn't make any sense to me. You know, the idea that the only right way to educate kids is to send them to this, you know, institutional model that we've set out for ourselves. when I know from personal experience, if I go to some function here in St. Louis, I mean, pre-COVID, go to some function in St. Louis, dang well that if I'm hanging out with some kind of leadership group, there's going to be, these 3 or 4 guys over there talking about their experience at MICDS and Burroughs. And then you're going to have these 5 women over here talking about their, Rosati Kane days and, all these people. So if going to a private school or exercising some kind of option is such a horrible idea, then why do so many people in power have private school backgrounds? I don't, that to me just sounds hypocritical, right? So, and I'm not even saying that that's the best model. I mean, for some people, that's a great decision. Like I said, a charter school might be a great decision. So, I just think people should be able to make their own decision for their own kids about that stuff.
So when we start thinking about community connections related to choice, why is it important to have that parent involvement and that parent cohesiveness when we advocate for our children?
There is nothing better, Michaela, than the parent voice when it comes to this stuff. I'm a firm believer in that. And that's what SEAM, the Children's Education Alliance of Missouri, that's what SEAM does, and why we have chosen this path. I mean, you can get a lot done with a lot of, super brainy people on your staff and a lot of high-level connections and a bunch of lobbyists, and that's true. You can get stuff done that way, but that's just not us, and that's not the kind of change we want to see, even though we have a distinct perspective, vis-a-vis school choice, having options, even though that's our thing. We don't want to do it unless that's what parents are, asking for. But we just keep meeting parents who are asking for options. And so we keep working with those parents and new parents and training them to be, effective advocates to tell that story. Because all the data and all the statistics, that means a lot, and data-driven decisions are critical, and I'm not saying ignore data, but what's memorable, what people can hang on to, what people can recount, and what people can use as an example is someone's story. And that's why that's so important to have a parent testify and say, look, I know what you all are talking about, and here's my story. Here's what I want to say about it. This is the experience that I'm having, and I need this kind of solution because what's happening in my community or where I am, there's no solution there for me. And so I'm asking you to pass this law so that I have an option to, and then fill in the blank, so that I have an option to go to a virtual school. Well, that is an option. That's real now. We just talked about that last night on SEAM, talked about virtual school as an option and all the ways that school districts are trying to erect obstacles for parents who are trying to enroll in a virtual option. The same thing with a private option or a charter school. I mean, parents should just have those choices. It doesn't make sense to me not to.
Okay, and then kind of shifting gears, thinking about the community aspect, how as a community do we support other parts of our state in understanding that education, there's a crisis where we need help now? So, yeah.
This, Michaela, that's a great question, because this issue, depending on where you live, and I get it, all politics are local, and that holds true to a lot of things. But, the challenges that families face are not just limited to one geography. So, you might be surprised to find out how much parents across Missouri, actually have in common. There's rural school districts that are in miserable shape and failing, just like there's urban core school districts that are miserable and failing by and large. I mean, there's, it's important that parents tune in to statewide networks, whether that's on social media like Facebook and you're following somebody, so that you can kind of see what's going on all around the state, and you can see that you're not alone, and that you might actually, have some things in common with parents that you didn't think you had anything in common with. Because I guarantee you, there's some parent in some other part of the state who you might not otherwise meet or know, but who is also facing a challenge with their school, and they're also looking for some kind of solution. And, education laws are largely made at the state level. And so, for people around the state to see that they have other parents who are in this fight with them, I think is just really important. And, you can meet those people at the Capitol when we go there for advocacy days. You can meet them through virtual trainings and meet them on social media. And that's why, we have to have these community connections. We have to find out where there's other groups of parents who share some of this interest that we have in improving schools and giving parents more options and, cultivating innovative ideas and making that, easier to happen. That's, if you just yesterday in the state board meeting, when there's a crisis that everyone agrees is a crisis like COVID, all of a sudden, there's all these accommodations. Well, you can start the school year when you think it's the right time to start it. And, you can do this. And well, that all makes sense to address the COVID crisis. But what about all the families who, are in a state of crisis and, whose lives are turned upside down because of the experience that they're having in education? No one has a crisis plan for them. Nobody gives them any kind of leeway or any ability to make a different decision for their child. To them, it's just like, well, suck it up and, just do what you're supposed to do, which is send your kid to our school. And that sounds crazy to me.
So moving forward, what is the expectation you have of schools, and why is it important for that parent voice to be heard? Why is it important for parents and schools to get on the bridge?
Well, we work with a lot of school leaders as well, which, is, I think, really important. My expectation of schools is that, they not just take student enrollment for granted, for one, that it can't just be bodies in a building attached to a dollar sign that is the basis for a budget. And I get it, it is a really difficult job. No one should ever, and I know that parents have learned that through COVID-19 and having kids at home and what that all means. Yeah, great. But it's a tough job, but it's possible to be done. We see just here, even in the city, you can see a charter school located within a couple of miles of a traditional public school, and you can see the difference. You can see one of the highest performing charter schools and how they're doing on closing the achievement gap versus, the traditional school down the street. So it can be done. So if it can be done, then I suggest we try and do it, whatever that takes. So yeah, I don't know if I answered your question. I kind of got on a soapbox.
No. So when we started, I asked you about community connection and why it's important. So for me, I think community connection is important because it provides that support to families to let them know that they aren't the only ones going through it. To students, let them know they aren't the only ones going through it. I think it gives, like I said, it gives parents that support to know that there's other people who are going through the same thing, and I can reach out to them for help. And that one voice or a large number of voices is more powerful than one. So I think it's important for you to know your neighbor, know that person across the street, because when you need that multitude of voices, they can help you.
Yeah, that's well said, Michaela.
Well, thank you.
I think as we prepare to close out, what I would leave everyone with is, we are in a managing emotions series. And when we started this series, we talked about the importance of emotional courage as we navigate through post-COVID and what the new normal as it applies to education means. And then we had that opportunity to talk to that powerful parent who talked about the importance of knowing your why and why you have to speak up and get on the bridge for bridge repair. Peter, I would like to thank Children's Education Alliance of Missouri for you coming on the bridge and just telling them your why, but more so the community connection piece. This is a great time to change the face of education, but it's also a great time to pull up. As we have great division across the United States, this is a great time for us to reconcile back to one another and understand that we need each other, Blacks and whites, rich and poor, across the state of Missouri. And it requires emotional courage, knowing your why, and that community connection to make real effective change in education in Missouri. You have been pivotal in doing that. And we salute you today in Children's Education Alliance of Missouri for everything that you've done. And as we take this series forward, we would just ask everybody to come back and join us next Wednesday on May 20th when Crystal gets on the bridge with Miss Virginia. Miss Virginia is going to be enhancing the why factor and how to pull up with real emotional courage for bridge repair. So look out for that next week. And until then, thank you, St. Louis. Be blessed.
Thank you, guys. Bye.